Welcome to Epilogue Podcast, the show where we discuss some stuff that happened on a different show ages ago which nobody really cares about anymore.
Hello, I'm Portponky.
And I'm LeBloc.
Today we're discussing Deep Space Nine, Season 5, Episode 6, Trials and Tribble-ations. The Deep Space Nine team have an original series adventure in the past.
So this episode is a lot of fun.
Yeah, you've never really seen the original series, so I assume a lot of this is quite new to you.
Yeah, I've never seen a full episode of the original series, but just through cultural osmosis, I'm aware of Kirk, I'm aware of Spock. I even know about Tribbles, and I'm aware of that scene where the Tribbles shower down on him. I've seen that image before. So there was some familiarity here, but a lot of this was new to me. But I could recognize a lot of things in there that serve as fan service, but are still fun to see even if you're not overly familiar with the original series.
Well, I guess we work as quite a good test because I'm pretty familiar with it all and a lot of the jokes and stuff. And there are plenty of jokes about original series and homages and this and that. So we could see if they worked on me and didn't make it a weird and jarring episode for you to watch.
It was not jarring, which surprised me. I figured something like this would end up jarring for me. There was one scene that I was a bit confused, and I'm going to bring it up now. I felt like I was missing a joke, and they kept saying it, and that's when O'Brien mistook someone else for Kirk. I thought there was some joke there I'm missing, as if that actor was originally slated to be Kirk or something. I don't know why he kept saying it, other than the joke he doesn't recognize Kirk, which is fine, I guess, but I felt like there was something else there.
You would be right. The unnamed extra in that scene in the original series was Kirk's stunt double.
Okay. Yep. I knew it had to be something because they wouldn't let go of that.
It's funny by itself that O'Brien is dead sure he's recognized Kirk.
Yeah, and he keeps insisting. So there's humor in that, but I could tell something else was going on.
I've got a job lot of facts about this episode and trivia. I should probably just dive into that.
Go for it.
So, this was more or less the 30th anniversary episode of Star Trek.
To the day?
No,
Okay.
because the one that was to the day was Apocalypse Rising, the first episode of Season 5, and they didn't want to swap this to the first episode of the season. And then
That would have been a bad idea.
Well, yeah. They thought they would maybe do a one-off episode like this, but then they decided to just shuffle it a few weeks ahead.
This would be a terrible episode to introduce people to the series, so I can't blame them for that.
So confusing. It was one of the most expensive episodes to date.
Lots of stuff to reproduce.
Yes, and boy, did they reproduce it. The attention to detail is ridiculous. Even down to the lenses on the cameras and the type of film used were matched to the original series.
Ah, that's why it looks so accurate. I loved all the sounds and sights and the lighting. It all looked really authentic.
Oh, it's brilliantly done. You can't see the seams anyway. I always think, you'll be able to see that the quality will be different. the film grain will give it away, because the original series stuff is a little bit grainy by today's standards. But you can't. It's so well done. It's the same special effects techniques that they were using in Forrest Gump to fit him into historical footage.
It's nice when you have to tamper something old because it's already bad quality, so then you just have to match that bad quality.
That probably isn't easy, though. It's something that sounds easy, but to get the right kind of grain, right kind of texture to the way it looks, is probably very hard.
They make it look easy, which is great for us.
But the level of almost obsession they went to accurately reproduce this was kind of ridiculous. They rewatched the original series episode, pausing it at the control consoles to get the lights blinking in the right sequence
Oh,
for the
wow.
sets. They reconstructed the Enterprise model. I think they maybe, can't remember, but I think they replicated the original model, which was in the Smithsonian, but they had to recreate it at the point it was in that part of the show, whereas the model used in the original series would have obviously had extra stuff done to it for the films and so on. And they went over it with magnifying glasses to make sure it was exactly right.
That's
all
amazing.
This stuff, they went off their heads trying to get this perfect.
And I could see someone criticizing that, saying it's a waste of time. But even when you can't necessarily detect that sort of thing, you absorb the quality of it. It informs the rest of the decisions that are made, and the actors make use of it. So I would say it's not wasted, and they ended up with a great episode.
Well, even if the plot was garbage, you could just sit and marvel at how well they've stitched this all together. But luckily, the plot was actually kind of fun. When they decided to do a 30th anniversary episode, they decided pretty quick to do a callback to an original series episode, and then the lead choice was The Trouble with Tribbles, because it is so recognizable, and I guess they were right, because even you knew about Tribbles, so...
It's the only episode I have awareness of. If you ask me to name the plot of any original series episode, I don't even know the plot. I just know Tribbles exist.
You mean you don't know about Spock's brain?
Nope.
Where Spock's brain gets stolen?
Nope.
They remote control him like an RC car. And then
No.
McCoy has to put Spock's brain back in with a spoon.
Not aware of that one.
He doesn't use a spoon, but that otherwise is kind of an actual episode. Okay, yeah, so they picked The Trouble with Trolls. There was an outrageous coincidence when they were planning this episode. They went to grab some pizza at a pizza parlor. And I say they, I mean the writing staff. Ira Stephen Burr and Renee Eschewatsit. And they were discussing whether or not they could get original series actors back to act in the Deep Space Nine episode. The actors for Cyrano Jones and the guy in charge of the space station had both passed away. And then they were discussing whether or not they could get the actor who played Darwin, Charlie Brill. Now, it's not always easy to track down actors from the 60s. Often they will have stopped acting, and by the time it's 30 years later, or the records aren't there, or the contact details are missing, it's not that easy to track people down. It's probably easier nowadays because you jump on the internet, you can find anyone. So as they were discussing whether or not they could track down Charlie Brill, who plays Darwin, who should walk into the door of the pizza parlor but Charlie Brill?
That's incredible.
And they recognized him and said, hi. And asked him to do it, and he did it.
It was meant to be.
It's kind of one of these things that seems like 1,000,000 to 1 chance. Or worse than that, probably.
Or he goes in there all the time and they never noticed. And they eat there all the time too.
Well, maybe. And they've just been rewatching the episode religiously, and then they recognize him.
I've been coming here for 30 years and you guys finally noticed me?
Here's another random thing that they put in the episode. The 2 temporal investigation guys were called Dulmer and Loosely.
Okay.
Those are anagrams
Oh.
of Mulder and Scully. Don't know why they do that.
Well, why not have a woman then?
They considered making one of them say the truth is out there, but they decided not to and swapped it for another line about the truth.
One of my favorite jokes in here was about something I wasn't even aware of before this episode, and that's that Klingons used to look different. And I love how they handled it here. They could have made up some science reason, something about genetics or whatever, but I love that he just says, "Oh, we don't discuss it," and then it's left at that. So they acknowledge, yeah, we altered how they look, and that's weird when you consider the time frame, but we're not going to touch it.
It's the first time it was acknowledged on the show. And yeah, it was very good. Because, of course, anything they would do to acknowledge it would fundamentally highlight how ridiculous the whole thing is. So they did a little joke. Of course, then came Enterprise, and they actually had a story arc about it, and that wasn't so good.
I can't see that turning out well.
What, that story arc or just Enterprise? Because you're right. Oh, contentious. Some people like Enterprise. I'm not a big fan of it. They should have left it as it is here. They handled it perfectly.
It honors the past and then moves on from it, which is how it should be handled.
And it's the perfect context to handle it because it's a sort of jokey, silly episode. And you just... It's also an episode that stitches up a lot of silly stuff. For example, the Tribbles falling on Kirk are clearly being thrown out of the thing, out of the storage bin. So kind of part of this episode was they explained why they're being thrown out of the storage bin. I have a few criticisms, but I will say there's not that much point in criticizing what is strongly a comedy episode.
Let's hear it anyway.
Okay, so Dax is just useless.
Yes.
She's goofing jokes at the temporal investigations agents, and then when she's in the past, she's just constantly trying to derail the mission.
And talk about how she lived at that time.
Well, she had contentious comments about McCoy having the hands of a surgeon, which are actually sometimes cut out of television reruns.
Oh.
Because some countries are full of prudes. She was just not particularly useful. And what's worse is Cisco is telling these guys about what happened. Did he make any attempt to cover up her behavior?
Why would he?
Because she's facing potential legal action, I guess. And Cisco will do anything to protect his crew.
It'll be fine. Oh, Dax did something inadvertently. Her outfit shows us how much progress there's been in the portrayals of women.
Yes, that's true. Well, the waitress in the bar made that point.
Okay, so she
least-
needlessly made a point.
Well, okay, the waitress didn't outright state it, but the waitress's clothes, or somewhat lack thereof, made it abundantly clear that the times have changed.
It's certainly a product of its era.
Oh, for sure. Well, Star Trek was kind of very forward-thinking for its time. It doesn't show so much now, but you have Chekhov, the Russian, and Sulu, the Japanese guy, and the American guys, all working together on a ship. And in the 60s, that was quite forward-thinking. It was right in the middle of that Cold War stuff.
That's a good thing to point out. And I'm not trying to be harsh or anything. It's just now we have female characters who are more than eye candy. In this show, Kira is one of the most layered characters, if not the most layered. And she's female because why not? Why
Because
restrict it to men?
Half of people are.
Yes.
Actually, more than half. Did you know Star Trek had the first interracial kiss in the TV show?
I did not know that.
It's another way in which Star Trek is quite ahead of its time. And the thing with the miniskirts, yep, it was the 60s. When Next Gen came about, they initially tried to iron over this issue by having male members of the crew wear miniskirts. And that lasted about 5 episodes before. It's actually, well, it's kind of noble to do that, but it's hard to digest. That's too far out of most people's comfort zone. They can't conceptualize that as the future. And so they kind of decided to quit putting miniskirts on people. And then they kind of outright made a point of it in this episode.
That is kind of noble that they tried to do that, though. Tried to bridge that gap.
It's a show about social issues, and they do their best. Although then J.J. Abrams appears and ruins it all, but we'll pretend that didn't happen. Here's something that annoyed me. The temporal investigation officer person says, Regulation 157, Section 3, Paragraph 18, Starfleet officers shall take all necessary precautions to minimize participation in historical events. Why is that Regulation 157? Why is that number so high? Is this temporal regulations? Because if it is, it should be Regulation 1, Section 1, Paragraph 1. It sounds nice to say, but it's weird to put this thing as like some random fine print in some rule document that you wouldn't expect anyone to know.
Seems kind of critical.
Yeah, don't mess up the past too much. Gabriel Bell. You can go on YouTube and watch the original series and DS9 scenes from these episodes, this one and the Trouble with Tribbles, side by side, to see how accurate they are.
How did they do?
I don't know, I didn't watch it.
Oh, okay.
It's fine. I'm sure they did a good job. That's the kind of detail that is unnecessary. Even Back to the Future 2, which is very accurate, still is not particularly close in parts.
Which is fine. It's unnecessary.
Yeah.
As long as it agrees with our memories, because our memories aren't going to be entirely accurate anyway.
Yeah, it's only the fact that people have too much free time on the internet and can put these things up side by side. No one really cared or cares. It's good enough. I say that, it's Star Trek, so almost certainly someone out there does care.
We've mentioned before how trivial it is to change someone's physical appearance, and that's part of this episode, how a Klingon is altered to look human. And how is this not a rampant problem in this future? Criminals just changing their looks constantly, being impossible to track down.
There's even shapeshifter races. Well, other than the founders. Well, the founders are like full-on shapeshifters. They can become anything. But there's other races, especially in the original series, who can change. They can only do humanoids, basically, but can change faces. So, yeah, I don't see why they ever trust anyone's face.
I'm grateful they don't lean on that gimmick all the time, because they could and it would be annoying. But when it does come up, I have to wonder why it's not a bigger problem.
They seem to take a lot of stuff at face value.
Which is so weird.
Well, you know, things only go wrong about once a week.
It's deliberate. It keeps things interesting.
Space would be too boring if was easy.
Exactly.
So let's play it on the expert mode. I think it's time to bring a little quote of wisdom to the podcast.
Oh, I don't know how much wisdom is in this quote.
Okay, well, just a quote then.
Oh, okay. I guess you boys from Temporal Investigations are always on time.
Ugh, Dax.
That quote made me think of when I worked as a cashier as a young man, and the jokes that I would hear in certain situations all the time. And that's when I would check bills for fraud. People love to make the joke that the bill is fake, or they just printed it. Careful, it's still wet. And so that's what this reminded me of, how those guys probably get those jokes all the time and how tiring that is.
Yeah, one of my hobbies is speed cubing, or, well, in my case, not really speed cubing, more like, well, let's just say cubing.
Okay.
Rubik's Cube stuff, and whenever I do that in public, invariably I will get the comment, "Oh, I just peel the stickers off," which actually takes bloody ages to do. Plus, I have a stickerless cube anyway.
Do you point that out?
Yes, I always say, "Go ahead," then. Which is, it's stupid, because if you want to cheat or get it to the solved state quickly, you just take it apart. So the comment just, I can completely sympathize with the temporal agents, because
Yes.
they must get it all the time.
People think those comments are a riot, which just makes it worse.
It's just because it's hard to see the world through someone else's eyes when you've only met them for 5 seconds. I wouldn't blame people for it. I don't blame people when they say things about taking stickers off Rubik's Cubes, because they probably haven't seen one in 10 years. And they're reaching for the low-hanging fruit of comedy. So, but I do blame Dax. 7 lifetimes. Come on.
Having said that, she is still to blame.
She has done very little this season apart from busting out awkward jokes.
That's her thing this season, isn't it? I just realized that. Busting out awkward jokes.
It's almost like her character is becoming a joke.
Aww.
We should watch the next episode.
Yes, we should.
Bet you hear that all the time.
I hear it after every episode.
Well, let's go on. Let's go on and do that.
All right.